Okay, thanks for this really cool question. How to make a gradient with a basic brush and two colors. A more traditional method would call for a brush like this. This is a mop brush. Very, very soft. And you will paint your second color over your first color, full saturation to a certain point, to whatever point you like. Then using a dry brush technique, using circular strokes to effectively push the paint that you've already painted out into the rest of the painting, lighter and lighter as you go. Obviously, this is a technique that requires practice with the brush and takes time to become comfortable. This tutorial is for those who have never done a gradient and want to try one out. This is basically a DIY gradient for beginners. We're going to be using a very basic brush. This is a Wooster shortcut you can find at your local hardware store for $7 or $8. You're going to need a container for water, and you're going to need some water. Having a spray bottle certainly doesn't hurt. You're going to need a palette of some sort. I like to use a glass palette, but today we'll just use a piece of cardboard to keep it simple. You also need a nice straight edge that covers the height of your canvas. This is to help isolate the work into sections and keep us from going too far into an area that might be difficult to recover. We're also going to have an extra piece of scrap paper, cardboard, maybe a grocery bag. This is for unloading our brush and helping maintain paint control, being aware of how much we've got loaded in our brush at any given time. If you're not opening up a brand new brush, that's totally fine, but you do need to make sure that it's completely clean and completely dry. It's absolutely crucial that we have a dry brush when we're doing our secondary, our gradient layer. Also going to need an old towel, an old rag, maybe an old t-shirt, something that you can use to really dry out the brush when we need to. I'm using a piece of paper off of this oil and acrylic pad. These are generally relatively affordable. You can also find them on sale. If you don't have something to paint on, or if you want to practice first before you paint on something like a drawer or your wall or a piece of canvas, piece of cardboard is totally acceptable as a canvas in this situation. Lots of artwork is made with cardboard these days. Nothing to be ashamed of. So we're going to pretend like I've painted my base color white. If you're using two colors, I highly recommend starting with the lighter color first. It's much easier to paint dark on top of light than the reverse. Okay, fill up your water container with about 1 millimeter of water. Let's say 1 millimeter to 1 centimeter, just a touch. And have your water ready on standby. We're going to apply this Prussian blue as a gradient on top of this white. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to just establish where I want my gradient to happen and how I want it to happen. This is totally up to you, of course, but I'm going to have equal parts of light color here and dark color, and then have a transition happen in the middle. This is usually what you might want if you want to feature both colors that you've got. I'm going to establish something like this area here is going to be where our gradient takes place, which means it's the beginning and the end of our gradient. Everything after this will be completely white. This will be where it's mixing together, and this will be completely blue. All right, get your dark paint out. Palette knives are great, obviously, but if you don't have a palette knife, you can use something like a popsicle stick, an old butter knife from the kitchen that you don't bring back to the kitchen. What I used to do is go to Goodwill or a secondhand store and get old dishes. You can get an old plate. This is great to use as a palette. A paper plate works. We're just going to be using cardboard today because that is readily available to most of us from all the neat things we bought off of Amazon. We're going to be applying the paint to our palette first. We're going to spread it on almost like it's something yummy on a sandwich. This is because we want to be very mindful at all times of how much we've got loaded in our brush. So I'm going to spread a lot on, but keep it isolated to the very tips of your brush, like so. We're just going to dip, we're just going to tap the ends of our bristles, and we're going to need to load it up pretty decently because we know we're going to paint a lot, but this is about keeping the paint from going too far into our brush and making it difficult to get to a dry brush status. I've got my hard edge here. We're using a piece of cardboard. You could use a ruler, you could use a piece of junk mail. I'm gonna go up to the edge that I've established that I want full saturation. And I'm gonna start as far away from that edge as possible. We're gonna start all the way here at this end, and we're gonna work our way this way slowly. Nice, straight, vertical strokes. Nice and steady. Reload as needed. And just keep it within the first inch or so of the brush bristles, if at all possible. No dunking your brush into your paint container, please. Always apply via palette. Make sure you go all the way to your edges before you move on too far. It's always good practice, especially for this technique. Try not to go over areas you've already painted too much. You'll start to move it around, which we can use to our advantage, but right now, we know that we want this fully saturated. We don't want to mess around too much. Try not to miss any spots. You may need to go over it again later. That's okay, but let's try to get it as saturated as we can for now. So I'm going to paint this all the way to the edge. I don't want to have too much loaded in my brush right now. I'm hoping that you've used up most of your paint and you're kind of struggling to get this on. That's exactly what we want, because we don't want too much paint for the next step. This is called stippling. This is a good technique that we'll be using a bit. It's just dabbing. For you kids out there, dabbing is also. All right, I've gone all the way up to my edge. Now, this is the area here that the transition is going to be happening, which is not much. We have to be very careful when we're applying between this area and here. What I like to do, if I know I've got a nice dry brush, I'm gonna offload some more to see how well I'm doing. I'm gonna give myself a little bit of a border here. Just a little bit of dry brush stippling, get things started. Move this over, do some light strokes. Nice, so we've gotten a cool effect already happening. This is the end of our gradient, which means that this area is going to be really fuzzy, dusty stuff. A little bit like this, but even less so. I'm gonna move my mask over just a little bit. I haven't dunked my brush at all. It's still nice and dry. I'm gonna very lightly move it across the canvas. Just a few times. Nice, so now I'm gonna go all the way over to my very edge. Now this is the end of the gradient. So I'm gonna hold my mask edge down, make sure it's nice and straight. Make sure you've got dry brush. You might want to just double check. See, I've got some clumps there that are coming out. I don't like that. Dab it with the wide stroke also. I'm gonna use a wide stroke here, just very slowly, very lightly. I'm dusting. Pick that up. Might be hard to see, but I'm quite happy with that dust there. I need a little bit more below it. So I'm actually going to cover up what I've already done, maintain that dust. I'm gonna go below it just a little bit, and I'll do just like double what I did before. And you can kind of move down and fill up this whole surface area if you'd like. But remember, every additional stroke will pile on additional paint, so make sure you don't go too far. You can go back here and kind of start to blend this transition out. And try not to go too much against this edge. Always be mindful of this hard edge. Just too much against it will create a hard line. I like a bit of a hard line to be perceptible there. It gives the mathematical feeling of a gradient. But this is where creativity and just your perspective on this comes in, whatever you want to see. All right, I'm gonna pick it up. Not bad. I got a little too much of a hard edge there. That's okay. This is my marker for the end of my fuzz. I'm just gonna do a couple more strokes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I lost some pressure down here. I'm gonna get that. Be mindful. Nice. Not bad. Up here could use a little bit more too. All right. Now you can see what might happen if you start here. As long as this is pretty well dry to the touch, you can kind of lightly do some light circles to bring this out a little bit further. The cool thing about this technique is really that we're doing in layers, so we can slowly add more and more as needed, and even once it's fully dry, we can come back and do some touch-ups to areas that we think might need better transition. Right now, this is not quite enough of a transition. This fuzzy edge is not too bad. I'm gonna let that stay, but I'm gonna go a little bit closer. Just dab your tips, unload quite a bit, but not, you have to kind of find that balance. Now we're gonna do some stippling. We're just gonna do kind of dab, 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 dab as we go down. Nice, gonna bring it over just a touch more. Make sure this is dry, otherwise you're gonna be removing paint over here and they're gonna start to get wonky. If you want this transition to go further, you do make it as far as you like. I'm staying within this boundary here of what I had established. Dab, offload. I'm going to isolate it right here to this border here, just that millimeter, that half a centimeter. And I'm going to dab. You can do like little brushy circles if you want, as long as your brush isn't too wet. Nice. So now we're getting that fuzz that we like. It's better to do fewer strokes, check where you're at, and then continue than to go too far and find that out later. Do my best to kind of blend this area for now. Now we need to transition from here to the dust. Now here's where it gets a little bit tricky, and why we've got such a tiny bit of water in our dish. We're just gonna dip just the tips of these bristles into our dish. And then we're going to mix it and offload. Also use your rag or your towel. Get all the angles. And now I'm actually going to start right up at this edge. And I'm just gonna do a little bit. Okay. Not bad. You can see I'm getting some streaking there because I've got water in here, which is fine. I don't mind. The streaks are cool. But I want to know what I'm doing. I want to know what I'm applying at any given moment. All right, so now I'm just smoothing this out. And we're going to bring it over. Now I've got a little bit of a transition there. No problem. Just softly continue on. You should be losing more paint in your brush, which will aid in this gradation. Continue over, go again. Okay, now my very edge of my gradient is right there. This is where the dustiest of the dusty is taking place, and it could use just another 3 strokes. Oh yeah, I like that. I should say, be very careful where you set your masker. You should always just kind of set it aside. Be sure not to set it on your scrap paper or on your palette. Keep it over to the side when you're not using it so that it's drying out and it's not getting anything you might dab onto it later. Okay, I'm gonna dip into my water. I'm gonna dip that onto my palette. And then now I'm gonna offload. Okay, I'm gonna grab my straight edge, and I'm gonna want that transition to go to about here. I'm gonna start very slowly. I'm gonna just dab. You can dab into that transition too, especially because this should be fully saturated, so you wouldn't really notice a diluted paint on top. Okay, I like to keep it where it's just dotty like that. You can stroke it through if you want to do that, but you want to probably offload some more before you do that. Now I'm gonna move up towards my mask edge. You can even start doing some circular motion here. Okay, I'm back into my full force. I'm gonna get an edge here and dab. Okay, now I'm gonna move it over. Do some very light strokes. Just kind of blend it all together. If you have any wet brush at all at this point, you might be doing some smearing. Okay, I'm just gonna kind of go back and forth in this area a bunch of times. Okay. Now I'm seeing that I need a little bit more down here. Right there at the edge. All right. Not too bad. I'm gonna scoot it over more, making sure I've got a dry brush going. And just some more strokes. Work our way to the fuzz. Not too bad. I think I want a little bit more order here in this transition. I've got some splattering that goes further than others. I'm going to go to the furthest little splat. I'm going to reload, and I'm just going to go again. Okay, nice. There's some brush strokes here that clearly show the background color underneath, and it really kind of takes away from this gradient. Okay, I've let this transition area dry before I place my mask. I'm going to do another layer here. You can see it's a little bit desaturated. There's some variation there that we don't want. Filling in any holes, any visible gaps in the color. I want this nice and saturated so it really helps emphasize this gradient. You can go up to the edge as long as you know you're still within the saturated color. Okay, I need to go to about here. Blend that back while it's still drying. I absolutely encourage you to allow time for drying and allow time for processing the work. It's very easy to be dissatisfied in the moment when it's actually absolutely cool. So I know that I was just repainting this area and I've got saturated paint again in here. Make sure you've got all angles unloaded. I'm going to get up to there. I'm going to stay up against my mask edge, and I'm just going to stroke slightly. I'm going to bring it over again, do it again. Bring it over again, do it again. Bring it over again, do it again, very light. And now I want to get a little bit more definition on my fuzz band, on the end of my fuzz. That's just soft, 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 done. Okay, I'm pretty happy with this. This is where I will dip my brush tips again. A little bit more this time. We want this color to be lighter than before. Mix it, unload. Kind of mix it all with the rest of the paint that's in the brush. Now really unload it. Because even if it's diluted paint, it's going to double on top of what's there and darken it. And I'm going to just do some stippling. Nice. I'm going to bring it over a little bit more. And I'm going to do a little more. And even stroke just a little bit. But don't go too far. Move over just a touch more. Lightly stroke. Touch more. Lightly stroke. Touch more. Lightly stroke. See what we're doing there? We're just layering. We're just doing some layering. I see some areas down here that need some paint because they're showing through. If I like this fuzz here, or if I want to get it any better before I dunk further, let's do that first. Okay. Not bad. I'm going to go over a little bit further, do some additional strokes. Nice, I'm getting some little bit of streaking there, which I think is real cool. Ah, yes, I love that. I'm actually going to try to get a little bit more of that down here. Oh yeah, that's cool. But don't go too much. Look at that. Oh, I love that little band. I love that. It might actually be a little more than it needs to be, so I'm going to kind of do a little more here. But it really kind of gives it a bit of that mathematical look. Just going to try to blend it a bit. Now before dunking any further, I would just recommend repetition, because it will give you the same effect as long as you continue on. Oh yeah, look at that. I love that, those little bands. I'm going to go over here just a little touch more. Ah, yes. Doesn't that really help sell it somehow? I'm going to go over here to the right. I'm not going to go over these bands, which I'm really liking. I'm going to just go against the mask edge. Woo! Kind of gives that sunset effect. And remember, this doesn't have to be perfect, right? This is certainly not perfect. It has to make you feel good. And of course, you can always go again. You can always grab another piece of paper, grab another piece of cardboard. This is not an automatic process. It takes patience and understanding and grace for yourself, and understanding that your expression onto this paper is an expression of this moment in time that you are living. This is really important stuff, and if you fast forward in 10 years and you were to look at what you did here, your heart would warm and you would melt in the nostalgia of you being creatively active at this time. So take into account that art is very much about process. It's very much about the moment in which you are doing it. It's an expression. It's something to help you clear out your emotions, help you understand your emotions. It's also very meditative as you're working, and it allows you to kind of make use of time in a way that creates a product. It's really nice that when you sit down and make a painting, that painting is always there. So this is how to create a gradient with a simple brush, some cardboard, and some paint.